So what gets my curiosity is when I watch some of the videos recommended to me, they're recommended based on what I've watched and again, what gets my curiosity. And one of the things that got my curiosity a lot, and I think I've talked about this in the Topics on My Mind live stream as a topic, is the fact that, as we speak right now, there are tons, probably more than we want to count, of abandoned buildings and homes all across this country. Probably more so than we can imagine here in the state of California as we speak. And the reason I bring this up is because we have a bunch of YouTubers and content creators that have series here on YouTube that, make a living out of going and exploring these abandoned areas. I mean, heck, you got some cable channels and streaming services that have shows dedicated to that as well. But what really gets my curiosity is, first of all, how are these people able to gain access, to these buildings? Like, how are they able to do that? Now, some of them I did watch. I can understand that they probably, and believe as well, I can understand and believe that they probably get in contact with the right people, the people they need to get in contact with to make these journeys that they go on possible. But then again, there are those that do take a risk and they just decide, hey, we're going to go and explore without any consent whatsoever. And I'm sure anybody that sees a video here on YouTube, about them doing that, probably has gotten in contact with them and saying, hey, don't you dare do that again. You had no right to do that. But be that as it may, we can't really blame them. Because I think a lot of us, if we were in the same position, would want to figure out, hey, what happened here? And out of curiosity, we'd want to see exactly what may or may not got left behind. And when you look at some of these videos for these abandoned homes and, this abandoned buildings and everything, it does surprise you as to what gets left behind. I mean, one video I was watching, it was a guy named Ranger Rick or something like that. He was going into an abandoned home which pretty much has seen way better days, but you could tell some of its aesthetics, some of the home's aesthetics mirrored basically the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Well, you can definitely tell that maybe the last time somebody lived in that home was as recent as maybe the early 2000s with some of the other things in there like CDs, movies, stereos, you name it, microwave, you name it. But obviously, the question any of us would have is why would anybody leave, in a home like that, which is kind of like a mixture of different generations, why would they leave that behind, along with, family photos and stuff, and other prized possessions or things they might want to keep within the family. Well, obviously, it looks like the weather, like a flood, maybe cold, whatever, got to the home over time, and maybe there was some damage due to a flood or something like that, and they just probably haven't really gotten the opportunity to go back there and kind of clean things out and see what they could salvage and so on. When it comes to the abandoned buildings, it's pretty much the same thing. I think basically when they go there, when they go to these abandoned buildings, I think what happens is that, these buildings are more along the lines, on a list. They're on a list to be renovated or demolished, but the reason they've not been, put into that position yet is because they're on that waiting list of, okay, this is the next building that has to go, or this is the next building that has to be renovated. That would explain why you have a lot of these abandoned malls and theaters and other, business-like buildings, all across the country. But again, the ones that really stick out to me and anybody else are the abandoned homes, because it's like, how can anybody, in my opinion, just up and leave their home? It just really baffles my mind. Unless again they couldn't pay unless in my opinion, they couldn't, pay the mortgage, or they didn't want to pay the rent, and they just left. I mean, look, I'm not somebody that likes to up and leave. I let my because I want to make something perfectly clear. When I moved back out here from Kansas, I let my landlady at Prairie Ridge Apartments know that I was leaving. I turned in my key and everything. I turned in my key and all that. My dad still had a copy of my key, so he can go in and out when he needed to. But I would basically turn in my key, let him know I'm leaving, and that's it. My dad would go back to my old apartment to gather up anything else that needed to be gathered up, and then go from there. Basically help clear it out. But I did what I could to let them know I was leaving, period. I let them know I was leaving. I didn't abandon it, even though pretty much they indicated that I abandoned it, and that wasn't the case. I let them know, in advance that I was leaving. It's basically their fault, in my opinion, for not making it a priority to get in contact with me, to get me to talk to them and ask why, and do all the amenities needed to ensure that everything was taken care of. And also the fact that I was going through a lot of emotions at that time, because a year prior my grandpa had passed, and I made a vow on my birthday when he passed that I was going to head back home and be here. And pretty much that's the end of that. But again, when I compare it to what I see here on YouTube, at least I don't try to leave a lot of my stuff behind. And if I have to leave some things behind, I ensure, even if it's by coincidentalness, I ensure I have somebody in my family, like let's say my dad, being able to be there to pick up the slack and everything. Basically, go into the apartment, take the things that he needs that are mine out, like my VHSs, my vacuum, you name it, and then go from there. But when I compare it to what I see here, it's like you don't see that. You don't see that. Now, I'm not saying that the families that do abandon these homes and leave them intact, I'm not saying they don't do that because, hey, they don't want nothing to do with that home and they want to disassociate themselves as far as they can. I'm not saying that, because, I'm not saying that to be true, because for all we know, maybe the relatives that lived there that passed on said, hey, whatever happens, leave this house alone, don't live in it, don't let anybody else live in it, don't let anybody sell it, leave it intact, as is. Maybe they want it to be left that way, who knows? Or maybe it's the fact that the families do plan to come and check it out and take care of what they need to take care of. They just probably have others busy. They have other busy things to take care of that takes up their time, and they can't do that. And thus it allows people like the dog exploitation films and the Ranger Rick and all that to basically go into the homes with or without consent and be like, okay, let's see what we can discover as to why it was abandoned. But yeah, when I look at these kind of videos, though, in closing, when I look at these kind of videos and stuff of abandoned buildings and homes, I think about two questions. How the people that, are checking these abandoned places out, how are they able to get, inside, with or without consent? And also, why would anybody abandon them without having a plan? Those are the two questions that get my curiosity up. But what are your guys' thoughts? Let me know down below in the comments, as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video. But until then, guys, I will talk to you all later.